What's up with today's psycho sales training coaches? And if you ever doubted them, you were probably right to do so. You see, you don't have to mirror the image of some loud, over-caffeinated, super tan, and super buff guy to kill it in sales. You need a structure or a format that fits inside of your business or your sales position and works every day in real life. And I get it. I used to feel the exact same way. I'd be real fired up at first. I'd be consuming all these guys, content every single day. And after a matter of a few weeks or months, I would start to realize, and I didn't always know what it was at first, but I would start to realize that their world is so different from mine. This is their job. They're getting paid to spend their entire day, to be an influencer first, a salesperson second. They have the entire day available to them to influence you through content, to cold plunge twice a day, sauna for 20 minutes every day, eat like a nutritionist, and stay tan and jacked all year round. But in your world, you have the business that you own or that you show up to, your job to do, your family, so wife, husband, children, doctor's appointments, soccer practice, some semblance of a life outside of the 8 hours that you're at work, and you only have 8 other waking hours if you're sleeping around 8 hours a night. And that is the disconnect between your world and theirs. And that disconnect is often what makes you and made me feel like we are the problem, and you're not. You're not alone in feeling like you're drowning in motivational sales content, but starving for real sales training, because these coaches are constantly out there yelling that in order to have great success in sales, it's all about living their lifestyle rather than mastering your own. I was so deep in this mindset that it truly wrecked my confidence. And it wasn't until I just decided to break away from it and just all the platforms that I was consuming that content on, I just had to start searching other videos of things I enjoy that honestly were completely unrelated to sales, just so I could shut all that noise out for a minute. And thank God I did, because when I did, I started to regain clarity. In this video, I want to help you drop the comparison game and focus on real sales progress that lasts. By the end of today's video, you are going to have a 5-step format or formula for building your own sales playbook. One that feels authentic, that is achievable, and that is actually truly powerful. No gimmicks, no hacks. Just real results from someone who has been right where you're at. So let's dive in. So this framework that I've created and that I want to give to you is called the 5-step framework for conversation mapping. Conversation mapping is just a term that I coined for this framework, and it's worked for me. It took me a while to build it, but you don't have to. You can just literally copy this and put it right in your business or in your position. I am going to read from the paper just to make sure that I kind of stay on point and give you the most out of every single step. So step 1, I'm going to read this to you, is locate your high impact conversations. This is step 1. This is where you start. You will start by identifying the top 3 types of sales calls or services that you handle most often. Then you're going to pick one that happens the most frequently. And if you can't figure out which one happens the most frequently, which one makes the most money. Once you know which one you're going to start with, just write down what type of sales call it is. So could be if you were, a power washing company, you might say driveway, power wash driveway. Got it. Okay, so now that we have that written down, let's move on to step 2. Step 2 is called compare the conversations. So now that we have our first sales call, we're going to map out. Don't do anything with step 1. Leave it there, grab a fresh piece of paper, or just move a few lines down. You're going to list out your yes calls and your no calls. We want to find the common traits of why they're saying yes? Or what is similar about the types of customers who say yes? For example, a real obvious one might be that you can just tell that money is not an issue for these customers, that they don't even care about price, whereas some of the no's are a little bit more concerned about price. So you would just write that down, rich. They're rich. Money doesn't seem to be an issue for them. Okay. You're going to write down, were they more unsure? And there was a point in the call that you could tell there was a turning point that it turned to a yes. What was going on? You just need to write down, in your opinion, not what the company you work for, the company you own would say, what your employees would say, or if you're an employee, what your boss would say. You just need to write down what's similar. Anything. You can fill this piece of paper, go as far as you want to about what the similarities are. In step 3, now that you've wrote all of these traits and characteristics and types of conversations that were had in what you would call our very easy sales, we're going to find the common threads. So you're going to go through and kind of figure out, even though you felt like you were writing down different things, is there something in common with each of these? Maybe you rebuild decks, and one of the easy sales is when the wood is rotting and it's starting to become a real hazard. And then, maybe a couple down, you have one where they don't have any real hazards yet, but they're more concerned about the increase in cost to them if the deck were to collapse or fall away from the house. What kind of damage is it going to do to the house? What kind of additional repair costs are they going to incur? I would say that those two reasons, a hazardous concern, and then if a hazardous issue were to take place, causing additional unexpected expenses, would be a similar thread, which is the deck collapsing. Okay, one's fearful that somebody could get hurt. One is fearful that the same thing might happen, but they're not afraid somebody will be on it. They're more so afraid of what kind of damage will it do to their house. I would say that's a common thread. And so I would write that down. Step 4, we're going to replicate that emotion. If fear, urgency, or confidence moved the yeses to close the sale, learn how to introduce those naturally into every conversation. So in the example of being a deck builder, and one of the common traits that you found was fear of some degree of collapsing of the deck. I'm afraid if it collapses, my family member might get hurt. I'm afraid if it collapses, it's going to jack my house up more, and now I'm going to have a bigger price to pay. Let's go ahead and figure out how we can create that emotion for the people that aren't experiencing it yet. And so one way you might be able to do that is say, okay, I do want you to know we've been in business. Literally, this is just off the cuff, so please make yours better than this, but this is just an example. Something I might do at a break in the conversation, or when there's a turning point that I can tell that lead is going to start heading more towards a no. You might say something like, now, Mr. Smith, my job, whether you do business with us or not, one of the biggest reasons we've been in business for as long as we have is that we pride ourselves on the service we give to anybody who interacts with us, not just people that transact with us. In order to make sure I'm giving you the best service, whether you transact and do business with us or not, I do feel it's my obligation to just make you aware of just a few things. For as long as we've been doing business, what we found is, based on some of the things that you've said to me in today's call, that it is not long after that in some cases, not all, hazardous issues can start to take place. You would not want this deck to collapse, break, or give way in just a part or completely altogether while you, a family member, a loved one, or a friend was on it. That is a real possibility that something like that could occur. And so, John, whether you work with us or you work with someone else, I just want you to be aware that that's a real possibility. Again, an even more of a guarantee is that when that deck were to start to give way or collapse, 9 out of 10 times it's going to cause far more severe damage to the actual structure and envelope of your home, which can end up costing you tens and tens of more thousands of dollars. That was literally just a quick, off-the-cuff example of something I might say in a 5-minute conversation with a deck builder who said, this was the common thread. I might say, this could be one way of incorporating it. What do you think? Now, in that conversation, they'd be able to give me a lot more insight into their industry, which you can give yourself to do a lot better job than what I just did. But that's what you're going to be doing. That you're going to take the emotion they were naturally feeling that you did not have to give to them. And before the no's churn to become a no, you want to go ahead and volunteer that. And now what you've done is you've planted that emotion that these people were feeling naturally into John. And lastly, number 5. Now that we have figured out a way that we can take that common emotion and replicate it for the no's, the no customers, the leads that typically go cold, we're going to map the conversation, which is what this whole framework is about, conversation mapping. And the way that you're going to do that is you're going to have to kind of role play in your head, step by step. You're going to think about that call from hello, whether you're the one answering the phone or the call gets transferred to you. You're going to think about what they say and then what you're going to say next. So I know there's some steps that lead up to where you're inserting that manual emotional creation, where you're replicating that emotion, and you want to map that out. And the way I recommend doing it is on some kind of Word doc, Microsoft Word doc, a Google doc. Do not write it down. It'll make sense later, but this is something that you're going to make subtle tweaks and changes to, and oftentimes you're going to be able to shorten it greatly. You'll be surprised when you first start out, the size of the doc compared to a couple months later, which not only saves you some time, it makes you incredibly efficient and allows you to convert more sales in a shorter period of time, being that much more successful. But what you're going to do is, the way I did it is you will make what the customer says, in red colored font, and then what you say in black. And don't type this doc like you're handing it to somebody else who's going to judge the quality of how you wrote this document. You are writing it like you would speak, okay? So if you would typically say cuz instead of because, then type cuz. If you use the word ain't, then use ain't. I don't recommend it, but I'm just saying, make sure that you are typing it the exact way that you say it, okay? Even if it's not completely proper written form or proper English, you've got to read this thing. You've got to use it. So make sure it's how you talk. And then you're going to, customer says this is when I say this. Customer says this, and this is usually the part where I find out, are they one of these easy sale customers, or are they not there yet emotionally? And once they say that, and I find out, then this is normally what I would say back to them, because it's the proper step in the conversation. They're requesting something, but this is where I'm gonna insert something else, okay, which would now be where you're going to replicate that, and then play that out. Make sure that your parts are not too long-winded. You don't want to give it away that you're trying to create an emotion. So, type it out, read it through, see where you can kind of shorten it up, and make sure that you're delivering the point, but that you're not just running on and on and on, so desperately trying to get the sale. Desperality does not get sales, but wanting to be helpful does help get sales. So write it in a digital doc form so that you can make changes and edits to it as time goes on, and then you can save it somewhere. And then this is what you're going to call your call compass or your dialogue reps study guide. And so I call it a call compass when it's a sale that's done over the phone. You can have that document up on a computer screen, always ready. So when that call comes in, you're ready to go and you can read off that. Sometimes I call it a if-then playbook. It's your call compass. It's your conversation map for calls. There's a million things you call it, but that's how you're using it. If you're somebody who does your sales on site, out in the field, where it's real-time dialogue back and forth with the customer, then obviously you're not going to take this piece of paper and say, John, because we've been doing a lot of business for a lot of years, it's not just for the people we transact with, but because of how good a service. Anyways, you're not going to do that. That would be extremely uncomfortable for you and the customer, prospective customer. What you are going to do with it is in the first week or two, you're going to study it daily. You're going to memorize it verbatim. Okay, so that way you're sharp and on point in the field, and it works the same way. There is no difference between doing it on the phone or doing it in the field, other than if you're on the phone, you can look at it. If you're in the field, you do need to memorize it, okay? And then after a couple of weeks, you'll have it down pat. You'll be able to recite it verbatim, and then you can practice it. I would still recommend weekly because we're human. We get bogged down with new thoughts, new things get our attention, new problems, new issues, okay? And whether we mean to or not, we can start to deviate from the script. The reason that you probably used to be a little bit more passionate and maybe even a little better at sales is because it was your primary focus and you were super convicted and passionate about it. But as time goes on, we're human. So we want to take the path of least resistance. The call gets a little awkward here. I kind of don't like that. I want to avoid that. So I'll say this instead. These calls take forever. I'm going to kind of shorten it up by just getting to this point. That ultimately will kill sales. If it's what was working originally, and you're not doing so well now, that's a big reason why. So even when you think you have it memorized, you always want to refer to it. You want to revert to it all day long as a call compass, and you want to refer to it daily in the beginning and every week, once a week, if it's for dialogue reps, for in-person selling. So remember to the beginning of the video what we were talking about. If you are constantly consuming these sales influencers videos and content and not taking real action and implementing real frameworks into your business or your sales position, you're just eventually going to burn out, to get stuck, to lose your confidence, to feel like maybe you're just not good enough or that you've lost your touch. But remember, one of the reasons that you wanted to start seeking sales training was because you want to improve your salesmanship, get back to a place you once were, or in most cases, get even better. You wanted to change your life, change your family's lives for the better, okay, both financially and with freedom of financial stress and freedom of time. The 5-step conversation mapping framework is exactly what's going to give that to you. Listen, if you made it this far in the video, you are a real one, a real salesman, a real saleswoman, and not some online sales influencer. But if you are not completely convinced that this 5-step framework for conversation mapping is going to work for you or change your life, then just do one thing for me before you move on in your day. I want you to take 5 minutes and I want you to think about your best sales days, okay? Your best days at work. You're human. You have good days. You have great days. You have bad days. Think about the best day. Play it out in your mind, okay? Think about those days that you're in a really good mood, maybe because things are just really great at work or something's going on that's great in your personal life, and so you're walking through your day just really light on your feet. I want you to think about the calls that you have those days, and I want you to just write out those conversations. Not what I've told you to do today, because again, this is if you're not still convinced that this might work. I just want you to type out how the calls on those days go exactly the way that you do them now, but on the great days. What the customer says, what you say back. What the customer says, what you say back. The 3 different answers the customer could give and what the 3 directions you go next are. Okay, this won't take but just a few minutes. And if you even get started and get the doc pulled up and start typing it out, it's kind of enjoyable and it's kind of fun. I don't think you'll have any desire to stop at that point. And just write down what the real conversation is that you're having on a sales call on a good day. And use that tomorrow or the next work day that you have and read from it. Okay? Use the same words and use the same tonality that you use on the good days. And I guarantee that alone will double your sales conversions. That's how crazy successful conversation mapping is. Whether you just map the way you currently do it on a good day or you implement the system that I've taught you about today, it is incredible. That's it for this video. I pray that this video was super helpful and that you were able to get something from it, even if it's just the part at the end, okay, that you just map out a good conversation that you have every once in a while, you use it and it works, and then maybe that'll give you enough confidence to take your time, rewatch this video, go back through the 5 steps and implement conversation mapping into your business for your sales team or if you're an employee in your sales position. If you like this kind of content and you want to know when I put out more like it, hit the subscribe button just so you get notified when I put up new videos.